Welcome back to the Final Whistle podcast. I'm your host, Luca Wilson, and today we will be talking about news around the NFL, winners and losers from the combine. Without further ado, let's get into it. With big news around the league this week, you have Deebo Samuel getting traded to the Commanders for a fifth round pick, and nobody really knows how good of a trade this will end up being yet because Deebo did have an off year last year, and he's going to end up taking some of Terry McLaurin's slot reps. But I mean, it can't be a negative for the Commanders. If Deebo Samuel's a bust for the Commanders, you just end up trading a fifth round pick. And if he is good and gets you over that hump, that the conference championship last year, then I mean, you look like a genius only trading a fifth round pick for him. So only time will tell with that one, and you just get Jaden Daniels another weapon. And another team that had a rookie quarterback this year gets two big moves. You have Joe Tooney getting traded to the Bears today, for a fourth round pick. I don't really know what Kansas City's thought process is, if they're just trying to get some money off the books. But that was a good trade for the Bears, and they also trade Jonah Jackson, or they trade for Jonah Jackson from the Rams, another offensive lineman. They're going full out to protect Caleb Williams and maybe free up for taking a position player in the draft instead of taking an O lineman because they want NFL ready talent now so Caleb Williams doesn't get sacked 60 plus times again. You also have Darius Slay getting cut by the Eagles after just winning a Super Bowl. He's getting up there in age. They're probably trying to free up some money for Zach Bond and the rest of the free agents that they have. It's an understandable move. You just got to see where do they go now. They have a bunch of good young corners that they can rely on, not to that they're confident enough in to end up cutting Darius Slay. So we'll have to see what team he ends up going to now and provides that veteran leadership and that Super Bowl champion pedigree that he has. Next, you have Devontae Adams getting cut from the New York Jets. The Green Bay Packer era is over in New York. It was not a successful era at all. They told Alan Lazard they granted him permission to seek a trade as well. So you have Randall Cobb, Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, and Alan Lazard, all that came over just because Aaron Rodgers wanted them, and you won as many games as Zach Wilson in New York. So it was not a great time for Aaron Rodgers in New York, and I'm excited to see where Aaron Glenn goes in the future with the quarterback position and just all the skill positions. You end up keeping Garrett Wilson, who was going to ask for a trade if you kept Aaron Rodgers. So I think that was the smart move because Garrett Wilson is the younger and just I think he could be a franchise receiver for the New York Jets. So I think that was a good move by them. Next, T. Higgins gets franchise tag for the second consecutive year. I think this is kind of unjustly for T. Higgins. I think that the NFL rule should be you only get to tag a person once. Like you only can tag them one consecutive years. You can't do it back to back because then you get into the Kirk Cousins situation where you just get tagged for 5 years in a row. And I don't think that's fair for people like T. Higgins and or anyone, honestly. Because if you get hurt on that franchise tag and you have no guaranteed money, and then your market falls off, all due to the organization tagging you for so many years, and you never get that long-term contract that everybody wants financial security, and T. Higgins does not get it yet. Other news is the Vikings are not tagging Sam Darnold. This is kind of what I thought was going to happen. I thought they were going to go in a different way, and they are. So, I mean, you just got to see. They said that they might sign Daniel Jones um, to be like their starter to let JJ McCarthy develop for another year, which I think is very smart since JJ McCarthy did get hurt, season-ending injury. You need to give him time to develop. And if you get one more bridge quarterback to come in and then JJ McCarthy can be your starter for the next 10 to 12 years, I think that's very smart by the Vikings. And also the Colts are looking to bring in a QB for competition with Anthony Richardson. And to me, Anthony Richardson hasn't proved anything yet. I'll get into this later. I think that people take the combine too much into effect, and you don't look at the actual ball player or the actual stats from their college career, like we will get into with a player that people are saying is going to go undrafted now. So now to get into the combine winners, we have a lot more winners than losers in this draft class. I think my biggest winner in this draft class is Nick Iumanwari. He ran a 4.3840 43-inch vert, and an 11.6 broad jump, all being 6'3", 220. And with his another safety not having the best combine, I think he's going to easily jump into the first round and probably end up being the first safety taken off the board. And he really showed just what a freak of nature he is. And I think he did a lot for his draft stock going forward in this process. Next is Bashal Tutin from Virginia, the running back out of Virginia Tech, ran a 4.32 40, 40.5-inch vertical. Both were best out of the whole running back group, and had a 10-10 broad jump, which was second best out of the whole running back group. And the running back group this year is star-studded, a lot of starters in it, I believe, and it's a deep draft class. So the fact that he was the best out of 40 and the vert and second in broad really boosted his draft stock up in a competitive running back draft class. Next, my favorite receiver in the draft and who I think will be the best receiver in the draft, Matthew Golden, running a 4.29 40, best out of all the receivers. His college teammate said that he was going to break Xavier Worthy's record and didn't even run the fastest at his own university. So I think that Matthew Golden really showed that he has that top end speed. And like I said in the previous mock draft video, he's got that clutch ability and he's a fluid route runner. And I think he will be very good in the NFL. But I do think that his draft stock will rise, and that Bills pick that I had before probably will not be the pick anymore. Next, a guy that they're comparing to Myles Garrett, probably going to jump into the top 10 in the draft, Shamar Stewart, 6'5", 270, mind you. And he ran a 4.59 40, had a 40-inch vert and a 10.11 broad jump. I mean, he had a better broad jump than Bashal Tutin. I mean, this dude is a freak of nature. He's definitely going to jump into the top 10 in the draft. I don't know how high he will end up jumping. With Abdul Carter's foot injury, who knows? Shamar Stewart might get drafted first D lineman off the board. I feel like that would be a little bit of a overcommitment on Abdul Carter's injury, but GMs love to panic, and there's a short leash on GMs and nowadays in the NFL. So I could see Shamar Stewart going as high as top 5. There's two corners on this list that I think had a great combine. Darian Porter out of Iowa State, 6'3", 195, ran a 4.3 40. That was second best out of all corners. Had a 10.11 broad jump. That was also second from all corners. And he had the best three cone and the second best shuttle. I mean, this dude proved that he's a freak athletically while being 6'3". He's going to jump up in a lot of boards, and I could see him going even second round with this star-studded corner class. Maybe he even sneaks up into the first round. Next one, the fastest corner at the draft, Maxwell Harrison out of Kentucky, ran a 4.28 40, had a 39.5-inch vert, and looked very fluid in the drills. He was getting talked at like a fourth round pick. I could see him going early day 2, maybe mid day 2, but I think he will be a great addition to whichever team really picks him. Next, really good 40-yard dash from this guy, James Pierce Jr., edge out of Tennessee, ran a 4.47 40. That was the best out of all edges, D lineman. Best 10-yard split as well. Shows that he has great BGO, and I think that he will go probably top 10 as well. I think this drops Michael Williams a little lower. I think it drops Mike Green a little lower as well because he has some character concerns from Virginia when he was there before he transferred to Marshall. But I think both of these, the edges, will end up going top 10. And then you have Luther Burden as a bulkier receiver. He ran a 4.42 40. He measured taller than people were expecting. People were expecting him to be in the 5'10", 5'11 range, and he measured in at 6 foot. And he looked very fluid in the drills. If you saw the gauntlet, he was up to 21 miles per hour on that drill, just catching them smoothly. And then you have Jaden Higgins, the receiver out of Iowa State, he is 6'4" and ran a 4.47 40. The kid was moving at that tall. Also, his running mate duo, Jalen Knoll, also had a great combine, and you can see his name getting into those top 6, 7 receivers in the draft. Next, Jahad Campbell, linebacker out of Alabama. Each day that I hear about this guy, I fall in love with him more as a prospect. He ran a 4.52 40 and looked very fluid in the drills at 6'3", 230. I think this guy will be a great linebacker in this league. I honestly still think the Buccaneers will end up taking him, but I mean, he is going to be a beast in that NFC South and to be that Levante David replacement. Next combine winners, you have Quinn Ewers and Jackson Dart. Looked very fluid in the throwing drills. Jackson Dart might have even thrown his name into the first round. Definitely solidified himself as a top 3 quarterback in this draft. Then you have Donovan Ezeruki, edge out of Boston College. Only 3-cone drill under 7 seconds for the edges. Best shuttle by far. He just shows that he's the most agile edge at the combine. I could see him going in the first round, probably closer to that 26 to 32 range. And then also, you just got to give your flowers to the running back group as a whole. Judkins had an 11-0 broad, 4.48 40 as a power back. Travion Henderson had a 4.43 40. Scattaboo had a 39-inch vert. So many starter caliber running backs in this draft class. You have Omarion Hampton, who's competing for that RB1 with Ashton Jeanty now. And I just don't think that people understand how good this running back class will end up being. And I just think the combine really, really proved that. Next, we have about 6 losers from this draft class and 1 loser at the end that I'll kind of go on a rant about a little bit. First, you have Malachi Starks, had a slow 40 for his size, and he's going to get hit with prospect fatigue because of this 40-yard dash, I think. I think he's still a blue-chip prospect, probably will end up being the best safety in this class, but because what Emanwari did in the combine, people are going to fall in love with him like every GM always does, the T-shirt All-Americans, but Malachi Starks has proven to people that he balls out with the pads on, not with the T-shirts on, with the pads on. Has some crazy interceptions in his career at Georgia, but I do think that he will fall with that prospect fatigue. Next, you have Isaiah Bond, promised a 4.2 to a 4.1 940 and ended up running a 4.41. I think that confidence and that cockiness, and then to run a 4.41, you're going to slide in the draft with these other people not even really talking. But Torrey Horton out of Colorado State ran a 4.42 and is about 4 inches taller than Isaiah Bond. He will end up falling in the draft just because people are going to have the character issues with him because he promised a 4.2, 4.1 and ran a 4.4, I think. Next, Jack Sawyer. I had him in the first round. I was sadly mistaken. He's going to go day 2. Measurements disappointed. He's 6'4", 260, and his 31 5/8 long arm length is in the 5th percentile of all edges since 1999. He will end up falling to day 2 just because of that. I think he still is a great ball player, but the arm length is a very, very questionable. And it being in the 5th percentile, I mean, teams are going to be scared because of that. And then you have Will Howard. You had guys like Pat McAfee really talking this guy up during the combine or during the draft process, and I think all the noise has quieted from this performance. Had some head-scratching mistakes, and I think this really tanked his draft stock. He still has the QB build, but I just don't think that he has the QB skills. I mean, when you're throwing to Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Egbuka, Carnell Tate, and that offense, it's hard to miss throws. And he showed at the combine that he's liable to miss throws. And then the guy that I want to talk about the most, Tez Johnson, 5'8", 150, ran a 4.5 40. But people don't know he's a ball player. If you watch him at Oregon, him and Dylan Gabriel lit the world on fire this year. They were the number 1 team for a reason, and then they just ran into the juggernaut of Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. But there's so much more to look at. He had a good cone drill. He had a good L drill. I mean, this guy is a smooth route runner, and people are going to take this 4.5 40 and blow it out of proportion. Cooper Kupp ran a 4.62. Not every guy has to have a 4.2 40 to be a good receiver in the NFL, and I think that that's going to be the downfall for somebody. This dude's going to end up going 5th, 6th round, and maybe have the potential to be a Julian Edelman, Wes Welker type slot receiver. And I think he'll shut these people up sooner rather than later. And then just the overall loser of this combine is the NFL combine as a whole. Your 2 best quarterbacks didn't throw. Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. All they did was do the interviews. And then Genty didn't test either. I mean, you just have such significant guys not wanting to test and feeling more comfortable at the pro day that this is really going to take a hit on the combine status for like top 10 picks in the future. If you are already solidified as a top 10 pick, then why would you test at the combine if other guys aren't doing it? And likely Shedeur will fall in the draft because he has some character concerns that have popped up recently. But I just think like Cam Ward, he's going to go top 3 no matter what, if he tested or if he didn't. So I think this makes the combine not look so appealing and makes the pro days look a lot more appealing because you're in the confines of what's natural to you. I mean, I think Cam Ward would much rather work out at University of Miami where he's been practicing for the last year to get ready for the NFL, and that's why I think that the combine is slowly just they have to fix something. You can't just keep allowing these dudes not to test, especially when it's arguably the three most polarizing players in the draft with Genty and Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. That it's definitely a bad look on the combine. And going forward, I hope that the best players test because it's fun watching the best players. You don't want to watch the combine's also for the hidden gems, but it's also for the superstars that solidify their names in being superstars. And with that, that wraps up the NFL Combine episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Comment what you want to see next week. And thank you. See you.